All right, it is our work day, our full day to work on assignment 1, our first portfolio assignment. If we look at our course outline, remember it always tells us what we're responsible for. It is September 9th. So you'll see that we are working on assignment 1 for it to be turned in next class. And it's worth 3 points. Right? That's reiterated a few times with the assignments. So how do those 3 points break down? If you turn in nothing by the deadline, that's how you get 0 points for an assignment. And the problem with 0 points, not 7, is that you cannot then turn it in later for a higher grade, right? So if you miss a deadline by turning in nothing, then you're burned on that assignment. You just got to focus on other things through the semester. The good news is each assignment's only 3 points. There's 100 points in the semester, so missing one assignment won't tank your grade. But there are 7 of these, so we have a lot of chances to learn this skill of acknowledging the deadline. So in order to reward you for that, if you turn in something by the deadline that doesn't meet the full requirements of the assignment but acknowledges the deadline, shows that you are thinking about it, shows that you are making progress towards it. For this assignment, that would be your sketch, which is part of the assignment. Then you'll get 1 out of 3 points, even though there's a lot of work still to be done. And then you can turn in something anytime later in the semester up until our last class meeting before finals week to still get up to full credit for that assignment. You get 2 points for turning in something by deadline that meets the bare requirements, kind of like passing an exercise. But there are areas that can be improved. It's not yet what I call engaging the viewer as art. This is not based on, a professional standard. This is based on your own work standard. Like trying to make it the best that you can make it with the skills you have. So if I give you 2 out of 3 points on assignments, it's because in the comments it tells you areas that could be improved, and then I'm happy to help you improve. In office hours, after class, that kind of thing, before class. And then if you get 3 out of 3 points, it means it meets all the requirements, and at least at the stage in your skills that you are developing, you have tried to address everything as equally as possible to bring everything up to a finish. It doesn't mean it can't still be improved. It just means there aren't kind of glaring things that require effort, right? So sometimes students will get a 3 out of 3 and still continue to work on it, for their in-portfolio because they're really invested in making it as good as they can. So it's going to be due on Thursday's class, that's September 11th. And then we'll do a presentation critique for it, and then we'll introduce the next assignment, and on and on. So you'll see assignments usually get a little bit longer than we had for exercises, though it depends on the assignment. The good news about compositing and concept art is we do it with assignment 1 for setting. We do it for assignment 2 for figurative content, for creature design. Right? And that can be cute, that can be horrific, whatever kind of way you want to push it. And then we have what's called a proving ground, just so you can kind of think ahead of how we're going to utilize these assets, these projects. And the proving ground is going to be placing our fantasy creature into our fantasy landscape. So compositing figurative with setting in a way that's really believable, with cast shadows, with atmosphere, with, adjusted lighting directions, all of that. And then that leads into our animation projects, which is kind of our final raster-only assignment. And then after that, we get into using vectors, and then vectors with raster, and then all the kind of interactions between them. So we're building your skills here. So it's going to feel kind of unfamiliar, but we're going to get lots and lots of practice at it. So remember, just always follow along with this. That's what we always do. It also tells you what unit the assignment belongs to. So this is part of Unit 4. And Unit 4 also has a question of the day, which several of you have tackled. But this is due by tonight to at least get this started, right? To inform a discussion we'll have in class, either next class or next week. And it's part of this, in the way you get credit for a question of the day, is you just answer on topic with more than 100 words. But it's to help us understand everyone's perspectives on these overall concepts of digital arts in history and contemporary culture. And there's a review of our intro slides if that helps. All right. So we talked about how we want a landscape, a setting design that doesn't have any figurative content in it, that's kind of devoid of things we would expect to be moving. Now, of course, a sun on a slow enough time span is moving. Clouds on a slow enough time span are moving. But you can see how this feels. This is concept art by NASA of one of the Goldilocks planets. You can see how this would work to have something animate across this, and we don't really bat an eye that the clouds aren't moving slightly or that the sun's not setting slightly or rising. Yeah. Well, this isn't even props. This is like a backdrop, right? Props would be like the smoke machine out of a crater, that kind of thing. Like things we would expect to be moving. Yeah. So the reason a sun can be included in a backdrop, in a setting design, in a concept design like that, is because it moves very slowly, right? So doesn't mean you couldn't go back and then animate that sun. But if you are animating a creature like walking across it, right? That creature is going to walk across before I'm going to witness that sun move at all or expect it to move. So that's why I'm not considering the sun or the clouds figurative content, like content you would expect to be moving. If I had rain pouring, I don't know why I keep saying page 1 there, but if I had rain in this, right, it would look really weird if something's walking and the rain's just holding still. So the rain isn't part of the setting. The rain is part of the figurative content, the storytelling. So we're creating a setting here, a backdrop. And I'll use theater terminology a lot, especially when we get into animation, right? So this is like setting a stage, but it's setting a stage with 3 different levels. So you have the backdrop, which is like the curtain behind the stage, and that's the far background. That's what these clouds and the sun and that far mountain are. Then you have the middle of the stage, and you're actually building things onto the stage for your characters to interact with and walk around, right? And that would be, for this one, this little lake and these boulders in the middle, and this kind of middle mountainside. And then you have the very front edge of the stage, the thing that kind of keeps the actors from falling off the stage, right? And it's the thing that the audience is always looking through to see the creatures, the actors. And for this foreground, they have a big crater, right? So how do they get these 3 layers of depth? The crater is kind of in blurry focus. We're looking past it. It's also cropped off to the edge. The middle ground is what we see in sharpest contrast and in clearest focus. And then the background, you see how it's also getting blurry again. Its contrast is shrunken down, kind of purple mountain's majesty, towards middle gray at the back. So that is one way to think about your 3 layers of depth in your landscape. Do you want them to be foreground focused, middle ground focused, or background focused? And yet, no matter what you do, all of these examples have 3 distinct layers of depth in them. It's just, what do you give priority? All right. Good to see you, Katerina. So we start with a vision and a sketch. And I like to start my themes with inspiration. So I'm going to go ahead and just start a reply. And if you want to, you can as well, because this will acknowledge the deadline. And I'm going to post something that's not required. How do you know what's required to post? You'll always see it in my example within the assignment. So for this project, there are 2 things required, your sketch and your finished composite. Right. And your sketch needs to be based on at least 5 references, and your composite needs to be built of at least 5 high quality, over 1,000 pixel references. More than likely, we're going to use something a lot more than just 5. But inspiration, this is optional, and definitely optional to post. But because this is my demonstration, I find it helpful to do it here. So even if you're not following the YouTube videos, you will see the process by which we're making this work right in the assignment. So I've made an assignment 1 folder in my master folder. I would take all of your master folders, take them out of documents, put them on your desktop, because we're going to be, like we did with other projects, we're going to be pulling a lot of reference images to the desktop to use. So I'm going with the theme that I used for my exercises, the He-Man theme. And I'm going to be inspired by kind of the spookier side, the Skeletor side of the He-Man universe. Lots of greens and purples and pinks. And I went ahead and made my Skeletor emoji my master folder icon. So if you ever want to do that, you can just go to your PNG, your finished PNG. This is my one with all the layer styles. And you would say Command A to select it all, Command C to copy it all. Then you close it, that puts it on the clipboard. And then you simply go to the folder that you want to change the icon of. So pretend this was my master folder. Click on Get Info. Click on the folder icon in the Get Info screen and then paste, Command V, and that will swap that folder icon. I find it helpful to replace your master folder icon just because it's one that we always need to find and we always need to back our work up to and from. So I have an assignment 1 folder. I've got the inspiration, and then I have started my sketch. Now I'm going to continue working on this sketch because so far it only has 3 references. And I want to fit another 2 in there. But notice how I started sketching. And I started sketching once I kind of knew my theme. And it doesn't mean I want to match this exactly, though this does have 3 layers of depth. But it meant I knew what I could start searching. And so what we are going to search with is Pixabay. So this is a site that is a Creative Commons open image search site. You can see it linked right there. In a pinch, you can use Google Images and make sure you're searching for large on Google Images. But what's great about Pixabay is if I look for spooky mist, and I can image mine for only photos, right? And I can even image mine for only purple spooky mists. Then it's going to give me fairly limited results, but high quality results, right? So all of these are a very good resolution to use. So let me not limit it to purple or pink because we're going to have a lot of options. Oh, this one's really nice. For how we adjust color. This one's really nice. Ooh, this one's really nice. Okay, so when we find references that we think would be helpful, like I was looking up teeth before and jagged rocks, that kind of thing, this is now for that middle ground that I'm kind of don't have enough for in my sketches. The misty mountains that these things rise out of. So how do I then download it? I'm not even logged in here. Do be mindful of where it advertises to you. It's subtle advertising, but often deceptive. These are not free to use. These are not Pixabay images. These are iStock images, images that you would have to pay to use. So just skip those. Only use the ones from the Pixabay results. And I can download the highest quality without having an account or even logging in. And that's actually a change they've just made recently, which is nice. It used to be you could only download up to the second highest amount. So where are those going to go? They go to your downloads folder. And then you can drag them out to your desktop. It does not work with Pixabay to do this, save image as, because this is a thumbnail, right? It's not as small as a Google Images thumbnail, but it's not the highest quality you can get. So you have to go to download and choose the highest quality. And it will show you the pixel dimensions there. Now, anything that's above 1,000 pixels in either dimension can be useful for this project. But the bigger it is, the more options you'll have for how you use it. And for something like mist that covers the middle ground, if I have it at 4,000 by 6,000 pixels, that means I can make a poster of this image at print resolution That's 16 by 20 inches, where